your slides, page 14, let's continue and look at the record in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, beginning in verse 23, because there is an order to the resurrections of dead people. So in verse 23, it says, "But each person in his own arrangement. The first fruits offering is Christ." And we saw that on the last slide, that the Lord Jesus Christ is the first and only one so far who has been raised up from the dead and given a new spiritual body. He is now alive. So the first fruits offering is Christ. And next, the people of Christ in his presence. Verse 24, "Then the completion, whenever he may give over the kingdom to the God and Father, whenever he may render ineffective all rulership and all authority and ability. For it is necessary for him," that's Christ, "to reign as king continuously until where he, God, may put all enemies under his, Christ's, feet." Death is the last enemy rendered ineffective, for he subjected all things under his feet. But whenever he may say, "All things have been subjected," it is clear that it is outside of the one, God, having subjected all things to him, to Christ. Verse 28, "But whenever all things may be subjected to him, then also the Son himself," that's the Lord Jesus Christ, "will be subjected to the one having subjected all things to him." Why? In order that God may be all things in all people and things. Now this passage explains a lot, and Paul gives us a lot of details regarding the progression of the resurrections. So each person who dies will be made alive within the arrangement or the ordered sequence that he or she belongs to. First of all, Christ is the offering of first fruits, as we saw in verse 20. The Lord Jesus Christ has already been raised up from among the rest of the dead people. The Lord Jesus Christ is now alive, and he will never die again. Now after that, or secondly, next sequentially, the arrangement of dead people who belong to Christ in his presence. That's Christ's people. This refers to the holy people who have died between the day of Pentecost, recorded in Acts chapter 2, and the moment of Christ's coming to gather all Christians together with him. Next, or after that in sequence, the arrangement of the completion, or the complete thing, the fulfillment. Remember, we were looking at the time, chronological time was moving forward. So the last in sequence here is the arrangement of the completion, when Christ will do what he needs to do to bring everything to its complete or perfect state. And that will come to pass at whatever time that Christ would give over the kingdom to God his Father. The Lord Jesus Christ will hand over all that he has charge over to God his Father. And then that will come to pass when Christ would render ineffective, inactive, or useless every rulership and every authority, any authoritative power which any spirit or people may have as opposed to Christ. And ability, any capability that any person or spirit may have been given or taken for themselves. So the arrangement of the completion will include the resurrections of the rest of the dead people, both the just and unjust from among the children of Israel and from among the Gentiles who lived either before the day of Pentecost, or those who live today who reject the Lord Jesus Christ, or perhaps those who will die after the holy people or the Christians have been gathered together by the Lord Jesus Christ and taken up from the earth. The resurrection of those who will be beheaded during the wrath period of time will take place first. That is at a future time, recorded in Revelation chapter 20, which we will look at in a few minutes. That will take place before the resurrection of the rest of the dead people, both just and unjust, at the same time. Paul continues that right now it is necessary, it is binding, that Christ reigns. The Lord Jesus Christ must reign as King. So the Lord Jesus Christ right now is reigning as King. He is exercising his kingship continually until up to the point that God will put all of the enemies, any enemy that exhibits hostility towards God and therefore also towards the Christ, under Christ's feet. So God is going to subject all of those who are against Christ underneath Christ's feet in submission to him. The last and final enemy that will be rendered ineffective, inactive, inoperative, or useless is what? Death. Death is an enemy. Death is not a friend. Death is an enemy. You know, death came to pass by means of Adam when he disobeyed God and rejected what God gave him to believe. Death is an enemy. It caused death for mankind. The death of their physical body with the soul life, and it also for Adam and those after him lost that spiritual connection with God until such time as the Lord Jesus Christ, the Redeemer, redeemed back the availability to have that access, that spiritual connection with God, and also giving us that hope of future glory to receive that spiritual body that the Lord Jesus Christ himself has already received. So we note that death is an enemy and it will be rendered ineffective. God caused all things to be in submission at Christ's feet. Now this is a reference to what God had previously foretold to King David, the prophet, and which King David wrote about regarding it in the book of Psalms, and that would be Psalm 8:6, where it said that thou madest him, Christ, to have dominion over the works of thy hand. Thou hast put all things under his feet. In 1 Corinthians, Paul also continues, and he said that whatever time Christ would say that all things had been subjected under his feet, it is clear, it's evident, that this subjection is excluding the one who subjected everything under his feet, and that is excluding God. God is not under Christ's feet. And then at whatever time that all things would be subjected to Christ, then also at that time the Son of God himself, Christ, will subject himself underneath God. Why? So that God may be all things in all people and things. In other words, God will be supreme. Only God's people will be alive at that future time, and therefore God is the one who will be the source of everything within and among everyone and everything everywhere. All the people who will be alive at that time will have received their new spiritual bodies like Christ's spiritual body. And all the spirit beings which obey the one true God will still be alive. They will still be around. However, all the people and the spirit beings who will have rejected God, and therefore also they will have rejected the Lord Jesus Christ, will have received their death, which will be final. So regarding everybody and everything in every place at that future time, God will be supreme.